Hi everyone, I'm Miss Mary Beth. I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Ingalls Memorial Library in Ringe, and I'm here today for Armchair Adventures. And that's our series where every day I read a little bit of a book to you, and eventually we finish a whole book together. And we're going to start a book today that I've never read before, but that I've heard was very good, called The Princess and the Goblin. And this was written by George MacDonald. And it was written as, again, kind of like The Jungle Book, as a series published in a magazine starting in November of 1870. This is a pretty old story. But this book is unique because, unlike The Jungle Book, it is one full story. But mostly this book was written directly for kids. So back then there weren't stories specifically written for children. It wasn't as big as it is today. And so it was a big deal to have a story that was written for children. So I'm hoping that the children who listen to this enjoy this story. And I'll just read you a description of the back so you kind of know what to expect. The Princess and the Goblin is an enchanting story filled with such a variety of suspense and drama that it is understandable why its author, George MacDonald, calls it not a fairy tale but a goblin tale. There's also a clever blend of fantasy and realism and allegory which intrigue the adult and delight the child, and it contains enough magic and mystery, humor and horror, and heroism and truth to satisfy the most imaginative reader. The story concerns an 8-year-old princess, Irene, who lives with her nurse, Ludi, in a farmhouse castle on the side of one of a range of mountains, atop which her father, the king, reigns in his castle, and beneath which the miners of the region toil and the wicked goblins hatch their wicked plots. There's a 13-year-old miner boy hero who, after a series of exciting and dangerous adventures, he foils the goblins, saves the princess, and is in turn saved by her. And there is, running like the thread she spins, magic in the saving of them all by the princess's great-great-great-grandmother, who gives the tale a fairy-like allegorical quality. So I think that sounds pretty good. I think there's a little bit for everybody. There's goblins, there's magic, there's adventure. And the goblins in this book inspired J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings, which I'm a very big fan of, so I'm interested to see what inspired that wonderful author. So let's see. We'll read a couple of chapters today. And the first chapter is called Chapter 1, Why the Princess Has a Story About Her. There was once a little princess whose father was king over a great country full of mountains and valleys. His palace was built upon one of the mountains and was very grand and beautiful. The princess, whose name was Irene, was born there. But she was sent soon after her birth, because her mother was not very strong. She was sent to be brought up by country people in a large house, half castle, half farmhouse, on the side of another mountain, about halfway between its base and its peak. The princess was a sweet little creature, and at the time my story begins was about 8 years old, I think, but she got older very fast. Her face was fair and pretty, with eyes like 2 bits of night sky, each with a star dissolved in the blue. Those eyes you would have thought must have known they came from there, so often were they turned up in that direction. The ceiling of her nursery was blue, with stars in it, as like the sky as they could make it. But I doubt if ever she saw the real sky with stars in it, for a reason which I had better mention at once. So if you notice, the narrator uses I a lot. He's acting as if he's telling a story to children in the present. So I think that's kind of cool. We get the narrator's perspective. These mountains were full of hollow places underneath, huge caverns and winding ways, some with water running through them, and some shining with all colors of the rainbow when a light was taken in. There would not have been much known about them had there not been mines there, deep, great pits, with long galleries and passages running off from them, which had been dug to get at the ore of which the mountains were full. In the course of digging, the miners came upon many of these natural caverns. A few of them had far-off openings out on the side of a mountain, or in a ravine. Now, in these subterranean caverns lived a strange race of beings, called some called gnomes, by some others called goblins. There was a legend current in the country that at one time they lived above ground and were like other people. But for some reason or other, concerning which there were different legendary theories, the king had laid what they thought too severe taxes upon them, or had required observances of which they did not like, or he had begun to treat them with more severity. In some way or another, and to impose stricter laws, and the consequence of that was that they all disappeared from the face of the country. According to the legend, however, instead of going to some other country, they had all taken refuge in the subterranean caverns, whence they never came out but at night, and then seldom showed themselves in any numbers, and never to many people at once. It was only in the least frequented and most difficult parts of the mountains that they were said to gather, even at night, in the open air. Those who had caught sight of any of them said that they had greatly altered in the course of generations. And no wonder, seeing they lived away from the sun, in cold and wet and dark places. They were now not ordinarily ugly, but either absolutely hideous or ludicrously grotesque, both in face and form. There was no mention, they said, of the most lawless imagination expressed by pen or pencil that could surpass the extravagance of their appearance. But I suspect those who said so had mistaken some of their animal companions for the goblins themselves, of which more by and by. The goblins themselves were not so far removed from the human as such a description would imply. And as they grew misshapen in body, they had grown in knowledge and cleverness, and now were able to do things no mortal could see the possibility of. But as the goblins grew in cunning, they grew in mischief. And their great delight was in every way they could think of to annoy the people who lived in the open air above them. The goblins had enough of affection left for each other to preserve them from being absolutely cruel for cruelty's sake to those that came in their way. But still they so heartily cherished the ancestral grudge against those who occupied their former possessions, and especially against the descendants of the king who had caused their expulsion, that they sought every opportunity of tormenting them in ways that were as odd as their inventors. And although dwarfed and misshapen, they had strength equal to their cunning. In the process of time they had got a king and a government of their own, whose chief business, beyond their own simple affairs, was to devise trouble for their neighbors. It will now be pretty evident why the little princess had never seen the sky at night. They were much too afraid of the goblins to let her out of the house then, even in company with ever so many attendants. And they had good reason, as we shall see by and by. What do you think of the goblins? They do kind of remind me of the ones in Lord of the Rings. Just live below ground, and they like to cause people above ground mischief. I guess they're not very happy with them. That was the end of Chapter 1. That was fast. Chapter 2 is called The Princess Loses Herself. Oh no. And there's a picture. Let's find out more about our princess. I have said the Princess Irene was about 8 years old when my story begins. And this is how it begins. One very wet day, when the mountain was covered with mist, which was constantly gathering itself together into raindrops, and pouring down on the roofs of the great old house, whence it fell in a fringe of water from the eaves all round it, the princess could not of course go out. She got very tired, so tired, that even her toys would no longer amuse her. You would wonder at that if I had time to describe to you one half of the toys that she had. But then, you wouldn't have the toys themselves, and that makes all the difference. You can't get tired of a thing before you have it. It was a picture, though, worth seeing. The princess sitting in the nursery with the sky ceiling over her head, at a great table covered with her toys. If the artist would like to draw this, I should advise him not to meddle with the toys. I am afraid of attempting to describe them, and I think he had better not try to draw them. He had better not. He can do 1,000 things I can't, but I don't think the artist could draw those toys. No man could better make the princess herself than he could, though. Leaning with her back bowed in the back of the chair, her head hanging down, and her hands in her lap. Very miserable, as she would say to herself, not even knowing what she would like, except it were to go out and get thoroughly wet, and catch a perpetually nice cold, and then have to go to bed and take gruel. The next moment after you see her sitting there, her nurse goes out of the room. Even that is a change, and the princess wakes up a little and looks about her. Then she tumbles off her chair and runs out the door. Not the same door the nurse went out of, but one which opened at the foot of a curious stair of worm-eaten oak, which looked as if never anyone had set foot upon it. She had once before been up 6 steps, and that was sufficient reason, in such a day, for trying to find out what was at the top of the staircase. Up and up she ran, such a long way it seemed to her, until she came to the top of the 3rd flight of stairs. There she found the landing was the end of a long passage. Into this she ran. It was full of doors on each side. There were so many that she did not care to open them, but ran on to the end, where she turned into another passage, also full of doors. When she had turned twice more, and still saw doors and only doors about her, she began to get frightened. It was so silent, and all those doors must hide rooms with nobody in them. That was dreadful. Also, the rain made a great trampling noise on the roof. She turned and stared at full speed, her little footsteps echoing through the sounds of the rain, back for the stairs and her safe nursery. So she thought. But she had lost herself long ago. It doesn't follow that she was lost, because she had lost herself, though. She ran for some distance, turned several times, and then began to be afraid. Very soon she was sure that she had lost the way back. Rooms everywhere and no stair. Her little heart beat as fast as her little feet ran, and a lump of tears was growing in her throat. But she was too eager and perhaps too frightened to cry for some time. At last her hope failed her. Nothing but passages and doors everywhere. She threw herself on the floor and burst into a wailing cry broken by sobs. She did not cry long, however, for she was as brave as she could be expected of a princess of her age. After a good cry, she got up, brushed the dust from her frock. Oh, what old dust it was! Then she wiped her eyes with her hands, for princesses don't always have their handkerchiefs in their pockets, any more than some other little girls I know of. Next, like a true princess, she resolved on going wisely to work to find her way back. She would walk through the passages and look in every direction for the stair. This she did, but without success. She went over the same ground again and again without knowing it, for the passages and doors were all alike. At last, in a corner, through a half-open door, she did see a stair. But alas! It went up the wrong way. Instead of going down, it went up. Frightened as she was, however, she could not help wishing to see where yet further the stair could lead. It was a very narrow and so steep that she went on like a four-legged creature on her hands and feet. And that was the end of Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is called The Princess, and We Shall See Who. When the princess came to the top, she found herself in a little square place with 3 doors, 2 opposite each other and 1 opposite the top of the stair. She stood for a moment without an idea in her little head of what to do next, but as she stood, she began to hear a curious humming sound. Could it be the rain? No, it was much more gentle and even more monotonous than the sound of the rain, which she now scarcely heard. The low, sweet humming sound went on, sometimes stopping for a little while and then beginning again. It was more like the hum of a very happy bee that had found a rich well of honey in some globular flower than anything else I can think of at this moment. Where could it be coming from? She laid her ear first to one of the doors to hearken if it was there, then to another door. When she laid her ear against the 3rd door, there was no doubt where it came from. It must be something in that room. What could it be? She was rather afraid, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear, and she opened the door very gently and peeped in. What do you think she saw? She saw a very old lady who sat spinning. Perhaps you will wonder how the princess could tell that the old lady was an old lady, when I inform you that not only was she beautiful, but her skin was smooth and white. I will tell you more. Her hair was combed back from her forehead and her face, and hung loose far down her back. That is not much like an old lady, is it? But it was white, almost as white as snow. And although the lady's face was so smooth, her eyes looked so wide that you could not have helped seeing she must be old. The princess, though she could not have told you why, did think her very old indeed. Quite 50, she said to herself. But she was rather older than that, as you will find out. While the princess stared bewildered, with her head just inside the door, the old lady lifted hers and said, in a sweet, but old and rather shaky voice, which mingled very pleasantly with the continued hum of her wheel, "Come in, my dear, come in. I am glad to see you." That the princess was a real princess you might see now quite plainly, for she didn't hang on to the handle of the door and stare without moving, as I have known some who ought to have been princesses but were only rather vulgar little girls to do. The princess did as she was told. She stepped inside the door at once and shut it gently behind her. "Come to me, my dear," said the old lady. And again, the princess did as she was told. She approached the old lady, rather slowly, I confess, but did not stop until she stood by her side and looked up in her face with her blue eyes and the 2 melted stars in them. "Why, what have you been doing with your eyes, child?" asked the old lady. "I've been crying," answered the princess. "Why, child?" "Because I couldn't find my way down again." But you could find your way up, said the old lady. Not at first, not for a long time, answered the princess. But your face has streaks like the back of a zebra. Hadn't you a handkerchief to wipe your eyes with? No. Then why didn't you come to me to wipe them for you? Please, I didn't know you were here. I will next time, said the princess. There's a good child, said the old lady. Then she stopped her wheel and rose, and going out of the room she returned with a little silver basin and a soft white towel, which she washed and wiped the bright little face. And the princess thought her hands were so smooth and nice. When the lady carried away the basin and the towel, the little princess wondered to see how straight and tall she was, for, although she was so old, she didn't stoop a bit. She was dressed in black velvet with thick, white, heavy-looking lace about it, and on the black dress her hair shone like silver. There was hardly any more furniture in the room than there might have been in that of the poorest old woman who made her bread by her spinning. There was no carpet on the floor, no table anywhere, nothing but the spinning wheel and the chair beside it. When the lady came back, she sat down again, and without a word began her spinning once more, while Irene, who had never seen a spinning wheel, stood by her side and looked on. When the old lady had got her thread fairly going again, she said to the princess, but without looking at her, Do you know my name, child? No, I don't, answered the princess. My name is Irene, said the lady. That's my name, said the princess. I know that, said the lady. I let you have mine. I haven't got your name. You've got mine. How can that be? Asked the princess, bewildered. I've always had my name. Your papa, the king, asked me if I had any objections to your having it, and of course I hadn't. I let you have it with pleasure. It was very kind of you to give me your name, and such a pretty one, said the princess. Oh, not so very kind, said the old lady. A name is one of those things that can give away and keep, that one can give away and keep all at the same time. I have a good many such things. Wouldn't you like to know who I am, child? Yes, I would very much like to know who you are. I'm your great-great-grandmother, said the lady. What's that? Asked the princess. I'm your father's mother's father's mother. Oh dear, I can't understand that, said the princess. I dare say not, said the lady. I didn't expect you would, but that's no reason why I shouldn't say it. Oh no, answered the princess. I will explain it to you when you're older, the lady went on, but you will be able to understand this much now. I came here to take care of you. Is it long since you came? Was it yesterday? Or was it today? Because it was so wet I couldn't go out? I've been here ever since you came yourself, said the lady. What a long time, said the princess. I don't remember it at all. No, I suppose not, said the lady. But I never saw you before. No, but you shall see me again, she answered. Do you live in this room always? I don't sleep in it. I sleep on the opposite side of the landing. I sit here most of the day. I shouldn't like to do that, said Irene. My nursery is much prettier. You must be a queen, too, if you are my great big grandmother. Yes, I am a queen, answered the lady. Where's your crown, then? It's in my bedroom. I should like to see it. You shall some day, but not today. I wonder why Nursey never told me, said the princess. Nursey doesn't know. She never saw me. But somebody knows that you're in the house. Nope, nobody knows, answered the lady. How would you get your dinner, then? I keep poultry, of a sort. Where do you keep them? Asked Irene. I will show you, said the lady. And who makes the chicken broth for you? I never kill any of my chickens, said the lady. I don't understand, then, said the princess. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Asked the lady. Oh, I had bread and milk and an egg. I dare say you eat the eggs. That's it. I eat their eggs, said the lady. Is that what makes your hair so white? Asked the princess. No, my dear. It's old age. I'm very old. Yes, I thought so, said the princess. Are you 50? Yes, more than that, said the lady. Are you 100? Asked the princess. Yes, more than that, said the lady. I am too old for you to guess. Come and see my chickens. Again she stopped her spinning. The lady rose, took the princess by the hand, led her out of the room, and opened the door opposite the stair. The princess expected to see a lot of hens and chickens, but instead of that she saw the blue sky first, and then the roofs of the house, with a multitude of the loveliest pigeons, mostly white, but of all colors, walking about, making bows to each other, and talking a language she could not understand. She clapped her hands with delight, and up rose such a flapping of wings that she, in her turn, was startled. You frightened my poultry, said the old lady, smiling. And they frightened me, said the princess. But what very nice poultry! Are the eggs nice?" "Yes, very nice," said the lady. "What a small egg spoon you must have! Wouldn't it be better to keep hens that will give you bigger eggs?" "How should I feed them, though?" "Oh, I see," said the princess. "The pigeons feed themselves. They've got wings." "Just so. If they couldn't fly, I couldn't eat their eggs," said the lady. "But how do you get at the eggs? Where are their nests?" The lady took hold of a little loop of string in the wall at the side of the door, and, lifting a shutter, showed a great many pigeon-holes with nests, some with young ones and some with eggs in them. The birds came in at the other side, and she took out the eggs on this side. She closed it again quickly, lest the young ones should be frightened. "Oh, what a nice way!" cried the princess. "Will you give me an egg to eat? I'm rather hungry." "I will some day, but now you must go back, or Nursey will be miserable about you. I dare say she's looking for you everywhere." "Except here," answered the princess. "Oh, how surprised she will be when I tell her about my great big grandmother." "Yes, that she will," said the old lady with a curious smile. "Mind you tell her all about it exactly." "That I will," said the princess. "Please, will you take me back to her?" "I can't go all the way," she answered, "but I will take you to the top of the stair, and then you must run down quite fast into your own little room." The little princess put her hand in the old lady's, who, looking this way and that, brought her up to the top of the first stair, and thence to the bottom of the second, and did not leave her till she saw her halfway down the third. When she heard the cry of her nurse's pleasure at finding her, she turned and walked up the stairs again, very fast indeed for such a very great grandmother, and sat down to her spinning, with another strange smile on her sweet old face. About this spinning of hers I will tell you more another time. Guess what she was spinning? I don't know. That's where the chapter ends. Do you know what she was spinning? Maybe we'll find out tomorrow. That's where we'll stop for today. What do you think? Are you enjoying The Princess and the Goblin? I'm very curious about her grandmother. And she seems like a nice princess. I like her so far. So thanks for reading those with me. And if you enjoyed any of the other books we've read, like The Jungle Book or The Wind in the Willows, we have them at the library. And now the library is open for curbside pickup. So if you want to grab some books, give us a call or send us an email, and we can gather some books for you to pick up. So if you enjoyed any of those, you can check them out. Thanks for joining me on Armchair Adventures today. I'll see you tomorrow for more of The Princess and the Goblin. Have a fun day!